What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. Earlier on in the week, we talked about wildcards for mostly around game week 4. Key players to think about, drafts, what I would be looking at in my team if I was thinking about wildcarding, and all that good stuff. In this one, we're going to look at when the best time to wildcard might be in the first half of the season. There's kind of 3 popular times that people are looking at. One is right now, one is in a few weeks' time, and then one is in a few weeks after that. And of course, there might be other weeks that are better for your team, but I'm going to concentrate on the 3 most popular in the community. So as usual, give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you enjoy it. If you're liking the content, you've watched a bunch of my videos, you haven't hit the button yet, just hit subscribe. It really helps me out. We're less than 25k away now from 250k, which is absolutely ridiculous. But let's just go into some general notes before we get started and looking on fixtures, advantages and disadvantages of certain times of the season. So one of the things I would say is you're never going to have the perfect squad. Right? You might wildcard and for the first game week it looks perfect, but at some point down the line those players just aren't going to have the best fixtures and you're going to have to hold on to them because other fires have got to be put out basically, or you're going to have to use transfers, someone gets injured, someone gets suspended. It happens. So we need to almost forget about having the perfect squad. Obviously we want to think long and hard about when to wildcard, but I often think that the advantages for a certain game week are kind of overblown in the community. Like, you have to do it now or you have to do it then. It's just, it doesn't really make that much of a difference, right? We are definitely, I've said this all week, I've said this for a while now, we're going to have to buy and sell big hitting players. We're just going to have to accept that we cannot own everyone. And I think in previous seasons, like I've said that, other content creators have said that a lot, but this season it's going to be more harder than ever because there's so many big hitters. Unless a bunch of them all get injured at the same time, it's going to be difficult. So those of you that are wildcarding now and you're going for Kane and Lukaku, Ronaldo and Salah, that's great, but you don't have Mane, there's no De Bruyne, there's no Kane, there's no Son. For those of you that are just going for 2, it's even worse, right? So we are at times this season going to have to sell those players, and there is at no point this season, even later on in the season when we built up team value, do I see us having 4 or 5 of these players. It's just not going to happen. So we need to just accept that, and accept that even if you hold on to your wild card, it's not going to get any easier with fitting in the big hitters, I would say, unless of course down the line there's loads of 5.5 million or 5 million midfielders that are options, but I just don't see it. And this is a big one because I always see people say this, well, will I just take a hit or 2 now and I can wildcard later? And then other people will say, well, just ignore the hit now, wildcard, and you can just take hits later. It's pretty much the same thing, right? People will fall into, not traps, but they'll get into issues where they have to take hits, and that happens sometimes throughout the season. But taking a hit now, like a -8, to not use your wildcard, to then wildcard later, what is the difference between wildcarding now and then if you get stuck later, taking the hit? And bearing in mind, in some ways, and we'll talk about this when we talk about the game week 4 wildcard, if you do it now, you might not get stuck later. I think that's the big difference. If you're definitely going to take a hit now, you know that. You've got that info. Later on, that hit might not happen. So in some ways, maybe the earlier wildcards, the better. So there's 2 trains of thoughts with wildcards right now. Pretty much I see people doing 1 or 2 things. They're either wildcarding right now, or they're going to wildcard in game week 7. Some people are looking at 8, right? So game week 7, 8, we can almost say it's the same because it's around the same game week. And I'll explain the advantages and disadvantages of both of them in a minute. And then some people will be thinking further down the line. But the majority are thinking right now or game week 7 or 8 for 2 reasons, right? That's what's been talked about a lot in the community. I'm doing it right now. But also, people having a wildcard is like burning a hole in your pocket. Remember when you were younger and you get like pocket money and you just had to spend it? It was there. For some people, the wildcard's like that. And I've got like that before as well. So we're going to look at the game week 4 wildcard. Now, for most of the clubs I've selected, right, this is game week 4 to 8. I've also done the fixtures for game weeks 8 to 12. And the reason I've chosen the teams that I have is not just because they've got good fixtures, but also because they're the main priority teams that we're always looking at. We're always wondering who do Liverpool have, who do Man United have, who do Man City have, who do Chelsea have, etc. Because we know for the majority of the game they've got the better players, right? But also there's some really good fixtures right now for kind of Leeds and Wolves as well. And that's who people will be putting in right now if they're wildcarding. So I look at this, right, and I'm not going to go massively into like Chelsea and how Spurs and Man City aren't great fixtures, but you could potentially hold a lot of these teams for a good period of time. So for anyone wildcarding now, they're probably going to put in a Chelsea player or two. So Lukaku, maybe Rudiger, possibly Mason Mount. I would definitely be looking at Leeds players as well, because I think after Liverpool, the fixture run's really good. We all know how good Wolves fixtures are as well. Man City are kind of mixed, but they're Man City, right? So no one cares. And then if you kind of fast forward to game week 8 to 12 and look at how many of these teams do the fixtures carry on for, well, Chelsea's fixture run is good right up until game week 11, right? Similar with Leeds, right up until game week 10, they've still got Southampton, Wolves and Norwich to come between 8 and 10. And Wolves are kind of similar, right? Aston Villa, Leeds, Everton, Palace. So they've all got good fixture runs. So straight away, if I'm thinking about what is someone going to do in game week 8 if they wildcard, or game week 7, they're going to bring in Chelsea players. Well, you can get them now if you're not worried about Spurs and Man City. They might get Leeds players where you can make a bigger advantage of getting them in earlier now. And the same with Wolves as well. They've still got some good fixtures left. But again, if we look at from game week 4, Watford, Brentford, Southampton, Newcastle. I mean, Wolves fixtures are about as good as they get for like 6, 7, 8 game weeks, right? So all these teams you can jump on now. So you're ahead of the curve, essentially. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. Man United and kind of Liverpool, to a certain extent, are the more interesting ones, because when you get to game week 8, if I'm wildcarding 8, I'm probably ditching all Man United players. And I include Ronaldo in that because of what I said at the start. We're just not going to be able to have every single player we want. So I'm thinking already ahead to my team. I'd find it very difficult not to have Salah, because Watford away is such a good fixture. Brighton's not that bad. And West Ham and Arsenal, okay, based on last year's numbers, they're pink fixtures. But for Salah, I wouldn't really mind having to play him in there. And I'd probably captain Lukaku for a majority of these fixtures anyway. Brentford, Norwich, Newcastle, Burnley. And I only want probably 2 big hitters as things stand. So if I'm wildcarding in game week 8, I can ditch all my Man United players. Whereas someone that's wildcarding right now will almost certainly want a few Man United players on there. Now, again, we're talking about as if this is some massive thing. You know what's going to happen around game week 8? People will just look to kind of transfer their Man United players out at the same time we're wildcarding, right? So in terms of kind of what the advantages are, for game week 4, you're kind of ahead of the curve for some teams, right? Chelsea, for example, although I still stress, I don't think being ahead of the curve, like for Villa, it's great, but for Spurs and Man City, I mean, I just don't care not having Lukaku for those fixtures, if I'm completely honest. You're in before price rise. So if these players that we're saying are good to buy in game week 8 are also good right now, there is a chance they'll rise in price. So you might not be able to afford your wild card later on, depending on how those players do. And also, there's lots of great fixtures over a long time. So there's a lot of teams you could go for now. Like Everton are another team that I'm not even probably going to talk about that much, that have really good fixtures right now. So if you haven't got Calvert-Lewin, for example, and he's fit, he could be another option. You can kind of keep him for a little bit of a long time. And bearing in mind then, you can plan. So you can plan when you're going to start transferring these players out, right? Because what will happen is, people that don't wildcard now will look to kind of just play the next kind of 4 fixtures and not worry beyond that. And those that do wildcard now will cover those fixtures, and then they'll start planning on transfers out afterwards. So you see, it's just a mirror, basically. Whatever you do now, if you wildcard or not, you're going to do the opposite later, basically. That's what I would say for the majority. Game week 8 advantages, you've got more information. I mean, realistically, well, not even realistically, we only have 3 game weeks worth of information right now. And you could say that's not enough to make assumptions about these teams. Like Wolves, really good attacking numbers. Can they keep that up in easier fixtures? Like, obviously, an easier fixture should be better, but you've also got to do a bit more. You can't just counter-attack all the time. And will Wolves be able to cope with that? I think they probably will do, by the way. But we've only got 3 games to go on about that. And also, I think if you go for game week 8 over game week 7, you can also make some interesting transfers, which I'll look at in a sec. And one thing to cover off, because I've not got them written up, is in game week 8, the other good fixtures for teams, Southampton have got a good fixture on Norwich, Villa and Arsenal. So I'm already thinking, like, do I really care about wildcarding and getting on these teams? Probably not, right? So realistically, it's only the other teams I talked about, Leeds, Chelsea, getting back on Liverpool if you've got rid of them for whatever crazy reason, Wolves. They're the ones you really want, and you can get on them now. So far, the game week 4 wildcard is looking good. I just think for a lot of people, they probably don't have a team that needs a wildcard. Let me just quickly talk about why I like game week 7 over 8. So we can see the game week 7 fixtures on here. So Chelsea have Southampton, Leeds have Watford, Wolves have Newcastle, etc. That's the column we're looking in. The interesting thing there is Man City and Liverpool play each other. So for anyone that wildcards in game week 7, you're probably going to want Liverpool players, right? Because straight away they got Watford away. So you're thinking, right, Salah captaincy. I'd be very surprised if people just ditch all their Liverpool players on a game week 7 wildcard. But then you're wildcarding into them having to play Man City. And of course, Salah and Trent can get points against anyone, but the chances are obviously reduced when you play Man City. So if you're going to hold your wildcard, I actually think you plan around that. And in that week, you can make some interesting transfers before basically you transfer them back in. So you can dodge that fixture in game week 7 and then maybe look at game week 8. So my plan, for example, will probably be this week to bring in Cristiano Ronaldo. If he's available, we're not going to worry about that just yet. It's a whole other week to go before the deadline. But I'll probably bring him in. So I get Newcastle, West Ham, Villa and Everton. Now, everyone wants Lukaku in game week 7. And again, I'm not sitting here telling you that he's a bad option. Southampton at home is a good fixture. But if I'm sat with Cristiano Ronaldo against Everton at home in my team, I'm not worried about that. It's not like Southampton, this infinitely better fixture than Everton at home. So if I haven't got Lukaku, but I've got Ronaldo, and that's the choice that I've made, I'm okay with that. So maybe in game week 7, I get rid of Trent for Reece James, playing Southampton at home. And then I've not got it up here, but Spurs play Villa. So I could go from Salah to Son and then just keep Ronaldo, right? And you know, captain whoever I want. Ronaldo against Everton, Son versus Villa, whatever it might be. The only downside is a lot of people are going to captain Lukaku in game week 7, so you are going against the crowd. But it lets me do something interesting, get rid of those Liverpool players. They're not likely to rise too much in price anyway. Don't have any Man City or Liverpool for game week 7. And then in game week 8, you just wildcard them back in. You get your Chelsea players, bearing in mind they've got Brentford and then Norwich and then Newcastle, then Burnley. So you can still jump on them. All you're really doing is missing Southampton at home for Lukaku, but instead you've got Everton at home for Ronaldo. So that's something to look at. If you're not using your wildcard right now, game week 8 might be better than game week 7. But if you are going to use it now, there's plenty of good fixtures. I don't think you're in too much of a concern. You can jump on triple Liverpool. So a lot of us have got Tsimikas, Trent, Salah. You might want to go for a playing player like Jota, or maybe even Robertson when he's back fit. Obviously he already is, but you could go for him if you've got enough money in defence as well. So there's not. I get the aim of this video is not really to tell you which is the better week, because that isn't a thing. There isn't a best week. It's going to depend on your team. I just don't think it's as simple as saying now is the best or later on is the best. I do think there's advantages to holding until game week 8 instead of game week 7, but that's just my opinion, right? That's because I'm happy to go Ronaldo now and not have Lukaku in game week 7. I just think, you know, again, if I've got Ronaldo stepping up, that's perfectly fine. Just a couple of notes again, just to go back over this. So game week 8, more information. Game week 7 transfers more interesting. That's why I like game week 8. Game week 7's obviously got the fixture term for Chelsea, so that's an advantage as well. Let's look at someone else or another time that people are looking at wildcarding. So the other option is to hold it until game week 15. Now the reason for that is Man United have a massive fixture swing, right? So we just talked about how those on game week 8 might completely get rid of all Man United players. Well, if you look at this run, Palace, Norwich, Brentford, Newcastle, Brighton from game week 15 to 19. This is over Christmas, by the way. This is in December. That's a huge fixture run, right? You're going to want Ronaldo. You're going to want a defender. Basically, you're going to want Ronaldo plus either 2 defenders or 1 defender and 1 midfielder. Who knows how the landscape has changed by then? Greenwood could be a mega option and started every single game. Sancho might have played himself into some form. We don't know, but that's one of the reasons to hold a wild card, right? So you can just react to those kind of unknown things that happen later on. But also, Man City have a really good fixture run as well. Watford, Wolves, Leeds, and Newcastle. Now, I won't go into all the issues with Man City. We know that they get rotated a lot. That could be an issue. But game week 15 is at the start of December. So there's only like one Champions League game in December. So I think the last one is like 7th or 8th of December. So for the rest of the Christmas period, there's no European games. It's all just Premier League. Now that could be an advantage for some teams, like Man United will obviously play most of their first 11 then for those games. There might be some rotation over Christmas, but for Man City, it might actually make things a little bit harder, so that's got to be considered too. But you definitely want some Liverpool players around this as well. So again, it depends on your own thought process. If you're looking at the weeks in between 8 and 15, you're thinking I can go without too many Liverpool players, you might want them back for this run. But also Chelsea haven't got a bad run either. So again, if you've wildcarded early and you got your Chelsea players for this run, it's not really that big of an issue. And again, I can't reiterate this enough. If you've held Lukaku all this time, and you're thinking, well, I haven't got a wildcard, how am I going to get Man United players in? Then Lukaku back to Ronaldo is such an easy switch. That's why I think having a premium midfielder and a premium forward, at least one of each, is just so key right now because you can move so easily. Spurs fixtures around this time are okay as well. Norwich, Brighton and Palace over 5 fixtures. And again, West Ham are good. We'll have to see what happens with West Ham by then. Are they still in Europa League? How are they rotating in the Europa League, etc.? So there is reason to wildcard here, but is it a big enough reason to miss all those kind of previous fixture runs? I'm not sure it is. There's there's always advantages, right? So easily able to bring in Man United transfers, Man United players, which may include 2 big hitters. So again, you might want Ronaldo and Sancho, Ronaldo and Fernandes. The fixtures are so good. Possibly not, because there's still so many other teams, but it's something you might want to do. May have more knowledge about Man City. Now, we're not going to have more knowledge about who Pep Guardiola is going to rotate, but if there's injuries around that time, then we might have more of an indication of who's going to play. One key period for last year was when Laporte wasn't fit and Stones and Diaz were starting every game. So everyone got, a lot of us got Stones really cheap. We knew he was going to play every game. De Bruyne got injured. That put Gundogan in the team playing every single game as well and in a more advanced position. And when you can get Man City players for those scenarios, then they're absolute gold, right? So potentially we'll get that. And also, busy period ahead of Christmas. I think the rotation is always overblown in the community about how often players miss out over Christmas, but it does happen. So you could fix your bench, etc. There could be a bunch of other players around your team that you want to move, not just the core players as well. Disadvantages is how much will you miss out in between, right? If you're the one thing I would say, I probably should have put this at the start, is don't get necessarily locked in. Like if you're going to play for a Game Week 8 wildcard, obviously make use of these fixtures in between, but don't say I'm definitely 100% going for a Game Week 15 wildcard and then be stubborn if your team needs one before, right? It's not the end of the world. And remember, a lot of people are going to blow their wildcards anyway, so they're not going to be in a better advantage or a more advantageous position than you are anyway. And again, how many big hitters is realistic anyway? So if we look at this fixture list, it's all well and good saying, yeah, just get Ronaldo and Fernandes in. Well, what about the Man City players? What about Salah when he plays Aston Villa, Newcastle, Leeds? You're going to have to fit them in again. So I come back to the same thing as I said at the start. I just don't think we're going to fit all these big hitters in, and we need to kind of stop worrying about it. So if you want to use your wild card earlier, I don't see a huge issue personally. Just on my team, for example, like if I'm saying that Leeds players are good for next week, then I've already got 2 of them. I've got 3 with Aiding on the bench. Man United players are good until game week 8. Liverpool fixtures are great right now, so having Salah and Trent is decent. Like something big would have to happen this week for me to wildcard. I just don't think there's enough issues. Like, people are getting Wolves defenders in. That's absolutely fine. But if Veltman gets back in the team, then him and Ayling rotate quite nicely until game week 8, to be honest. I think you get, like, Brentford and then whoever Leeds have got in the next game week. I can quickly look it up here. I think it's Newcastle. Yeah, Newcastle. And then Veltman's back to Crystal Palace, I think. So the rotation's quite nice. I'm happy to play Trent and Shaw for most games anyway. And like I said, if I go for a game week 8 wildcard, then I can change Shaw to Reece James, I can change Trent to Reece James in game week 7. I can do Salah to Son. I've not got them for the Man City game, and then I just wildcard them back in if I want to. So right now, having kind of thought a lot about this and having looked at all these fixtures and stuff, I'm not really bothered about holding it till game week 15. The landscape of FPL will have changed a lot. We've obviously got transfers, we've got hits if we need them. I'd rather wildcard a little bit earlier, probably, but I don't think I need it in game week 4, and I do like the look of game week 8. I'm not ruling out 7, but I just think that option to do something more interesting with the transfers is more exciting than keeping keeping Liverpool players against Man City. So I guess, I'm probably looking at game week 8 right now. That could change in a number of days. You just don't know. So that is it for this one. Hopefully it's helped you kind of think about the wildcard. If anything, if there's one point I can get across, is try not to stress about it too early. If you think your team needs it now, use it, right? Go and use a transfer planner like on Live FPL. Have a look at what your kind of team looks like for the next few weeks. Can you manage without one? If not, use it now and then plan for the future with transfers, how to get onto these fixture runs and stuff like that. We're not, like I said, we're not going to be able to have Salah, Son, Kane, Ronaldo, Fernandes all in our team at one time. We're going to have to pick and choose the right ones. And for me, that's mostly going to be around captaincy. And that's why I said at the start of the season, you've got a plan for captaincy. It is key, although we might change our opinions on who the best captain is as we go. If you did enjoy it, give it a like, hit that subscribe button. Let me know below when you are wildcarded in. I've actually got, I think, videos planned for pretty much every single day up until the deadline. So keep an eye out for that. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do and hit that notification bell, of course. And lastly, let me just do a quick shout out for Patreon. If you haven't signed up, there'll be a new league for September. So basically anyone that signs up before the start of game week 4 on the middle tier will be able to get into that Patreon league. There's a prize pool there with a picture from FPL Doodles. You get a copy of the Mind Game, or the FPL Mind Game book that I did the video with Ross. There's t-shirt, pint glass, and all that good stuff, right? So there's loads of stuff there. Ryan, thank you for signing up since the last video as well. I'll leave it there. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. Enjoy your weekends. Enjoy the rest of the time without FPL, although hopefully you'll continue watching the content. But don't overthink things too much. There's still a lot to learn this week as well. So like Jota, Torres, all that good stuff as well. So yeah, don't be panicking too much. Have your thoughts and ideas, but also take a little bit of a break from FPL. But of course, keep watching the videos. Hit like, hit subscribe. I'll see you again soon.